Welcome. Let me fix my mic. Welcome to Livestream Monday. I am your host, Ivy, and I'm sorry I was a little bit late today, but here I am. I'm here now. Stop. All right. So today we are going to talk about Samhain because Samhain is coming up. If you are watching the replay for some reason, you can please just type replay so that I can see that. Hi, Amanda in Long Beach. And I see Lisa's here too. Hello. Hello, my friends. So today I want to talk a little bit about Samhain. Hi, Audrey. Okay, so today I want to talk about Samhain and what it is and why it's important. And I entitled this, oh, I feel super fancy, Lisa. Oh my God. Yay. I should just get used to that, right? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So, I want to start by talking about what Samhain even is. So Samhain is, let me bring you a little closer to me. Okay. All right. So Samhain is spelled Samhain. So if you've heard Samhain or Samhain, I remember watching True Blood a few years ago, and there was a big witch arc one season, and they're like, it is Samhain. And I'm like, no. Like literally there was like, somebody had one job, and that job was be like, how do you pronounce it? And it's Samhain. Hi, Charlotte. It's Samhain, not Samhain. And some people say Samhain, but really the way that I say it, that I've been always told to say it, is Samhain. Samhain is on Halloween, right? So it's on the 31st. The word Samhain actually means summer's end. It is a time where the veil is thin. So if you have been experiencing some weird stuff going on in your house, maybe some things out of the corner of your eye that you're not used to seeing, maybe some lights, maybe you're like, where are my keys? And you find them in the refrigerator or a place that they usually aren't. Maybe something fell off the wall. We had a couple of things flinging themselves off the wall at my house the past week and a half. So any of those things, if you are experiencing those things, don't freak out. It seems to happen a lot, especially if you are like kind of sensitive to ghosts and energy and that sort of thing. I feel like some of us are more sensitive than others. It's not a bad thing, not a good thing. It's just a thing. And we get some extra oomph. And that's what, in my house growing up, we call that the house is getting noisy. And when the house gets noisy, it means like literally it's noisy because things are moving by itself or you're seeing things or whatever. So when the veil gets thin, we tend to experience more spirit activity. Now, does that mean it's like it is Samhain and it's the 31st and the veil's thin? It's like, here's the veil, and then it closes back up in November, and that doesn't happen. When the veil actually starts to thin, I find that it's usually maybe the first or second week of October, and it goes through maybe like the second or third week of November. That's just been my experience. The thinning of the veil is a gradual thing. It's not like a magic trick where they like pull off the tablecloth and everything's thin. It's not like that. It definitely is a gradual process. It's just the thinnest on or around the 31st. So most people will create their ceremonies around that time. And that's why a lot of people do ancestor work at that time. I'm going to move this over here. Sorry. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about some themes, but a lot of people do ancestor work because the veil between the worlds is at its thinnest. It is the best time to do ancestor communication. And I'll talk a little bit more about ideas for that. A lot of people do ancestor work or do more ancestor work than they normally do during the Samhain season. We've got ghosts and spirits. Some people refer to Samhain as the witch's new year. Like it begins the new year. in many mythological traditions, like we've got like the god that dies, like in the Wiccan tradition. In many of those traditions, the god actually dies at Samhain. So the god dies at Samhain and is reborn at Yule. So the god dies at Samhain, summer's end, and like the new year. I don't feel like it is a new year. I feel like my personal idea of the new year is I feel like the year kind of ends and then we have a dark period, and then the new year for me begins at Yule, at winter solstice. So that's how I see it. But there are a lot of people who see it like as the witch's new year. Okay. And also, finally, it is the third harvest. So we've already talked about the other harvests. We've got Lunasa or Lammas, which is the first harvest, which is the bread harvest. And then in September, we had Mabon or autumn equinox or harvest home, however you want to say it. And that's the fruit harvest. And Samhain is the final harvest before wintertime. And that's the meat harvest, which sounds pretty gross, right? Like the meat harvest. It's not as like romantic as like thinking of sheaving corn or whatever and doing all, and, picking fruit. No, it's brutal, right? Because it's brutal. And so in ancient times, they had to have a meat harvest because not all of their livestock would make it through the winter. You don't have enough. You're lucky if you have enough food to feed your family. You don't have enough food to feed all of your livestock. So what they would do is they would cull the livestock. They would kill them and start preparing the meat so that it would be able to sustain them over the harsh winter time. So that's what the meat harvest is. And it's spooky and gross and creepy. So it kind of fits right in with like Halloween and spooky and all of those things that we kind of put together with Halloween. Okay. So let's talk about the themes of Samhain. I talked a little bit about it right now, but we've got the ancestors. We've got the underworld. So if you know mythology, the underworld is kind of where not every single pantheon probably has the underworld, but usually there is some sort of place that you go after you die. And for some, that's the underworld. That could be Valhalla. That could be, whatever your pantheon believes that to be. Or if you don't believe in a pantheon, if you're like an atheistic witch, that's totally cool too. But I'm just going to kind of talk about it in regards to like polytheism, right? So the underworld is a place that the souls go after they pass away, after they pass over. So the idea is they go into the underworld, and at Samhain, that veil between our world and the underworld, or the other world, however you see it, because everybody's going to have different systems, right? Because everybody believes and worships differently. That veil thins. So that's when we get to speak to our ancestors. And if you are not into ancestral practices, I know when I first started, lucky for me, I didn't have anybody who had passed away. So it was hard for me to make a cognitive connection about what that would even mean or feel like to me when I first started practicing. I didn't really have much of an ancestral altar. I didn't do any like genealogy. I had no idea who my actual blood ancestors were. But even if you are not into your ancestral practice, you can still do some introspection and introspective work where you can kind of go into your own personal underworld and do some work with that. Again, it also is the final harvest, so most people will eat meat. We'll talk about that in a second. Another theme is preparing for the darkest part of the year. And I'm going to talk about like deepening into the dark part of the year in a few weeks, but really like this is the darkest that it's going to get between Samhain. So Samhain is the cross quarter day between the autumn equinox, and where the day and night, length of the day and night are equal, to winter solstice. So winter solstice is like the longest night. I always want to say the darkest night. The longest night, sorry. So right now we really are literally going into the darkest part of the year. So some of that is about preparing for that. It might be cleaning your altar. It might be preparing yourself for some more introspective work. It could be something like that. And also, it's about endings. Yeah, for genealogy research, right? Okay. So those are some of the themes of Samhain. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments. I'm sorry, I have you guys like on a different monitor, so if I'm looking away, that's why. So I entitled this live stream Creating a Powerful Samhain. And so I kind of want to talk about what I mean by powerful. Now, if you watched last week's live stream, there was one, I explained one question that a lot of people don't ask themselves when they're creating a personal celebration or a coven celebration or whatever. And that question, spoiler alert, I'm going to give you that question right now. The question is, how do you want to feel? Okay, so we talk about all of these things that we want to do. I should do this and I should do that. And, I'm on Pinterest and I have 5 million ideas and I'm going to decorate this way. And we have all of this like stuff up here. But if we don't think about how we want to feel, because a lot of ritual and even if you're not doing ritual, even if you're just doing activities, or you're doing a dumb supper, which I'll explain in a second, or you're just doing a potluck with your friends, you want to structure it around how you want to feel. Like what kind of connection do you want to make? So if you want to make a connection, where you want closure because you had somebody who passed away, that is how you want to feel. If you want to feel connected to your ancestors as a whole, that is how you want to feel. If you want to get closer to a darker goddess like Hecate, if you want to feel connected to her, that's how you want to feel. So before you start thinking about all the activities, and because it can get overwhelming, it's super fun and it's easy to get super inspired because we have so many awesome like resources that are available to us now, I want you to ask yourself that question first. And I'm probably going to say that in every like Sabbaty live stream from now on, but it's really important how you want to feel, because if you create your ritual without taking that into effect, you might feel amazing, you might feel different, but if you don't really think about it and you don't structure it around your end result, which you have a result, but you also have how you want to feel at the end, connected, inspired, etc. If you don't take that into account, then you might come away from that ritual feeling a little disappointed, and you're taking enough. Look at how much time you're taking. You are listening to this live stream right now, so it's important to you. You want to create a celebration. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, what everybody else thinks that their celebration needs to be, but you do want to focus on how you want to feel. So first think about that, how you want to feel. So I'm going to start with that, and now we'll talk about some activities. So if you are going to align yourself with the theme of like the final harvest or preparing for the darkest part of the year, you could do some activities. Some of these activities you can do in circle. Some of these activities you can do outside of circle. Really, you're setting an intention. Yes, you are setting an intention. But I don't like to call it like an intention, because so many people are like, oh, I set my intention and my intention is prosperity or love or this and that, because intention in the way it is used most often nowadays is like a generic like feeling that like it's just a generic thing that you want to put out. It's like your goal light. So that's why I make sure that I'm talking about your feelings, how you want to feel at the end. But yes, it's your intentional feeling, the feeling that you intend to have at the end of the ritual or celebration or party or whatever you want to do. So preparing for the darkest part of the year or final harvest, a couple things you can do is preserve the last of the summer harvest. This is especially amazing if you have your own garden. You can make pickles with your last cucumbers, or you can, you make zucchini pickles, you can can peaches. Preserving is something that our ancestors did. Most probably all of our ancestors, because no matter how far back you go, like winters sucked most likely, right? So you had to preserve the food. Maybe not if you're in like a desert area where the weather is different than what I'm used to. And I'm just speaking from my own experience as a Southern California person who has only seen snow twice, but I assume that really sucks. So our ancestors used to have to preserve food, and yeah, they probably didn't have glass ball jars and canners, water bath canners or pressure canners or whatever you have. They probably didn't have all of those things, but they still had to preserve food. That might mean making onion braids, or, curing meat so that it will keep over the winter time. So preserving the last of the summer harvest is a thing. And then another idea is to create one big final meal, because not every piece of produce is easily preserved. You could create a beautiful, huge feast meal, maybe something that lasts all day, with the foods that wouldn't be able to be preserved. Like we can preserve salsa now with tomatoes, but there are some things that we might find that are a little bit more difficult to preserve. Or if you don't have time to work on preserving things, you don't have time to learn how to can something, you might look at like the end of summer produce and create a meal out of that. So that would be just like, you probably could look it up online, what foods, fruits, vegetables are in season. Sorry, I've got something in my eye right now. What foods are in season for me right now, and see what happens at the end of the summer. All right. Eating seasonal food kind of ties in with what I just said. And then also doing what you need to do to prepare for winter. So that might be around your house if you have to clean your gutters, or bring in your patio furniture, or do other winter things. Like I said, I'm from Southern California, and I assume that you have to do things if it snows, because that seems like a normal thing for me. Sorry, I don't really know too much about it. All I know is cleaning the gutters, bringing in the patio furniture, or wrapping it up in a garbage bag so it doesn't get wet over the winter. Or it's not just your physical stuff, but also emotionally. What do you need to do to prepare for winter? Do you have seasonal affective disorder? Do you know that in the wintertime that you're going to be sadder? Do you feel down during the wintertime? If so, take the time to prepare yourself for that. Maybe figure out a way to bring more sunlight into your room. Maybe get a UV light. Maybe, just do whatever you need to do. Maybe do some extra journaling. Figure out how you're going to take care of yourself, because you're probably going to need a little bit more self-care. If you know that it's going to be a rough holiday season because of your family, figure out how you're going to cope with that. Think about that now, so you're not taken aback by it when it's actually holiday time. So doing what you need to do to prepare for winter. Yeah, that's probably not something you're going to do as part of your celebration. I mean, you could make it a celebration. You can turn anything into something fun. Mary Poppins taught me that, right? But some things are important to take care of, and it's a good time to do it because it's aligning with the cycles of the sun. Okay, so those are some ideas for your final harvest prepping for winter. As always, if you have any questions, type them in the comments. I will get to them. Okay, so now I want to talk about ancestors and the underworld themes. And as you know, I always talk about themes. I'm not just going to list off a bunch of shit that you could probably do, because I'm assuming you have Pinterest, you have Google, you can just search for whatever. But to me, it's important to create thematic rituals because it helps us connect better with the actual meaning and reasons for the holiday. So that's why I talk about it in terms of themes. If you are new, I know we have some new people in the group, so I just kind of wanted to explain that. So ancestors and the underworld. So if you are doing a ritual, you can invite your ancestors into your circle or your space. You can, you probably want to make sure that you're clear that you only want your ancestors, or you only want positive spirits, or you only want, you have the control to invite things into your circle and also people and things that used to be people into your circle, and to tell other people to get the fuck off. So that is up to you. You have the power to do that. There are some reasons why you might want to invite your ancestors into your space, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But that is something that many people do. You can write an ancestor evocation, or you probably can look it up on Google. It's probably called ancestor invocation. There is a difference between invocation and evocation, although those words are often conflated. I say this as many times as I possibly can. But hi, Christina. But invocation is when you are inviting something inside of you or inside of somebody else, hence the in. Evocation is when you're evoking somebody to or something to be present. So if you are invoking the goddess, you are asking her to like come inside of you and possess you, like aspecting, which is an actual thing. But that's not something you probably want to try for your first ritual. I would advise against that. But people write ancestor evocations. You call them invocations, but it's an evocation to invite your ancestors into your circle. You can also create an ancestor altar. If you live in an area like I do, where there is a high Hispanic population, we have a lot of the Day of the Dead events here. And one of those traditions is to create a Day of the Dead altar, which is very similar to the ancestral altars that I have created in my life. So an ancestral altar is basically that, just that. It's an altar dedicated to your ancestors. So sometimes we see photos of your ancestors, offerings, foods they might have liked, drinks they may have liked, flowers, candles. If somebody had a favorite color, maybe a candle of that favorite color. If you have a scarf or a keepsake from an ancestor that you want to honor, you can put that on your altar. We in my group sometimes we'll buy marigolds, which is a Day of the Dead tradition as well. And we kind of, because that is such a cultural tradition where we are in our area, we sometimes will do that. It's all about how you feel and how you want to create your own ancestral altar. Some people include, like if you have like a giant altar and you want to like include all your ancestor stuff on your regular main altar, that is awesome. You should do that. If you are working with a group, you have a huge group and you're going to do a couple different things and you have your altar, I really highly suggest, especially if you have more than 4 people in your group, and especially if your group is over 25, like if the ages are over 25, that you have a separate ancestral altar. It doesn't have to be huge, just a separate altar, because the older your friends or your group sisters and brothers or whatever are, unfortunately, the more ancestors are going to have to honor. So you are going to have more photos and more keepsakes and more funeral pamphlets and more, bowls of water and flowers. You're just going to have more if you have more people and if the people are older. So that is a super practical thing. If you're by yourself doing your own ritual, your own altar might suffice. But if you have a lot of people, especially older people like myself, we have a lot of loved ones that we want to honor. So I suggest a separate altar for that. So since we're talking about ancestor altars, I want to talk about offerings for your ancestor altar. So like I said, you might find that you're called to bring like funeral pamphlets or candles, but you also want to maybe think about the ancestors that you actually know, or the ancestors, if you have done genealogy and you have some really awesome records of your ancestors that you want to honor, you might bring offerings. So for example, if you have a great grandmother who you found a newspaper article about her and she loved to knit, you might put knitting needles on the altar to honor her. Or if your grandfather loved bourbon, you might bring a bottle of bourbon or take some bourbon and put it in a little dish as an offering, or their favorite foods or, things like that. So ancestor offerings for the ancestors are usually really personal. However, if you don't know much about your ancestors, most people will put a bowl with some water in it. Bowl with water and a candle, and that is like your most basic offering. But if you do know more about your ancestors and you kind of want to bring in that energy and you want to honor them personally and specifically, especially if you're asking them into your circle. If you're asking your grandmother or grandfather or dad or mom or sister or your aunt or whoever, and you love them, you want them to come visit you in your circle, I suggest that you really think carefully about the offering that you want to give to them. Like what would make them happy besides your beautiful face? Like what would make them happy to come and be on your circle? So that is a good question to ask you when you're cultivating offerings for your ancestor altar. There are guided meditations out there that you can do in circle to meet your ancestors. I have one that I wrote probably about a decade ago. I'm going to see if I can find it. And if I can find it, I'm going to record it and I'm going to post it to the group for you guys in case that's something that you might be interested in. But in these meditations, it takes you kind of like deep inside yourself, and it gives you a place where you are able to re-see your ancestors and give them messages and meet them on, because the veil is thin, you really, like, it's really a lot easier to communicate through that veil, through meditation, through trance work, to really spend some time with your ancestors. So I know there are other meditations out there. You probably could Google one. I know I have one that my coven has used a couple times. I'm going to find that again and see if I can, like I said, record it and share it with you guys in case you guys are interested. But that's a really good like focal piece in an ancestor themed Samhain ritual. Another thing that people like to do is to write a letter to the ancestors or to a specific ancestor. Depends on if you want to write it to your ancestors that you don't know or an ancestor that you do know. And then you burn it in the fire and allow the smoke to take the messages across the veil. So that is something that is really sweet, and it is something that you can do in a group, and it is something that you can do if you're solitary. If you're in a group, something that we have done, my group has done a few times, is we read them out loud. And I will tell you that it makes for a very emotional time, but it is a very big bonding experience. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable around other people, it allows your walls to come down. It allows you to connect more deeply with the people around you. So this kind of exercise not only honors, your ancestors when you're doing this, but it also allows you to be vulnerable in a place with people that you care about. Now, I wouldn't do that in a public ritual. That's not something that if you were doing an open ritual and you're inviting everybody you ever knew, that probably wouldn't be really good. If you're doing a circle or a dinner or something with like your 5 best friends, that is something that might actually bring you closer. I'm just putting that out there. Okay. Moving on to the dumb supper. This is a really common tradition that is done at Samhain, or sometimes at the new moon around Samhain or the full moon around Samhain. But the dumb supper isn't dumb. No, it's dumb because nobody speaks. So in a dumb supper, usually it can just be you by yourself. Again, this is something you can do as a solitary ritual. You can also do it with a group. Like my group often does dumb suppers for Samhain. We do it as a potluck. We usually try to make comfort foods, but especially if you are doing it by your own self, I suggest that you might make some of your ancestors' favorite foods and use that as part of your dumb supper. And what you do is at the beginning of the dumb supper, you invite your ancestors. And if you are not comfortable just inviting your ancestors in like nothing, you can still cast a circle and ask that in that circle only your positive ancestral spirits can reach that circle, that energetic circle. You can do whatever you need to do to make you feel comfortable. However, please realize, like, if you are sage literally will, we all know, most of us probably know that sage, Palo Santo, that's cleansing. It's going to get all of the spirits out, right? So, and it's going to smell like sage for a while. So if you want to sage your space before a Samhain ritual, I suggest you do it a long time beforehand, and make sure you are then bringing that Samhain-y ancestral darker energy in, because you don't want to be like, hey, what's up, Aunt Hilda? Have some sage. Peace out. Like, I want you to be here. Just kidding. Like, you don't want to do that. So really take some thought and think about what it is that you are doing in your ritual. But for the dumb supper, if you want to cast a circle, cast a circle. If not, don't. That's cool. So what you do is you serve yourself, or if you're in a group, you might have somebody who serves everybody in the plate, makes everybody a plate. And then you've asked your ancestors to be present. You've created your plate of food. You also create a plate of food for like an ancestral chair. So you set a place that symbolically is for your ancestors. And then what you do is you eat, but you don't speak. So it is silent. And while you're eating, you allow yourself to be open to any messages that an ancestor might bring to you. Now that might mean, kind of going into a light meditation. That might mean just being open. It all depends on your like energetic openness skills. If you're a medium, you're probably not going to have to drop into meditation. It might be a good idea to just kind of do your very best to relax. That like light meditation when you are just doing your very rhythmic, kind of slow breathing, and just sit with the intention of being open to messages that your ancestors might bring to you. You also might want to have a journal if you're doing a dumb supper. That way, if you do have messages, you can kind of quickly write them down, or you can just stay in the moment and experience them as an experience and not something that you want to go back to. It all depends on how you feel and what you want to do. Okay? And then finally, there's trance work. And I don't really do a whole lot of trance work. It's something that I'm interested in. It's something that I'm studying. It's something I've done a little bit of. And I'm really interested in it. But I did want to bring it up. Like I said, I'm not an expert. But by going into trance, it allows you to connect with beings on the other side. So that could be your guides. It could be your ancestors. It could be deeper. It could be your higher self. I feel like it's really important that if you're doing trance work, that you go into it with a specific intention in mind. Sometimes that might not be your thing, but as it's like a general thing, as a general rule, I think it's good that you go in with an intention. So that is something that you might want to explore if that's something that's interesting to you. Okay, any questions so far? No? No questions so far? Okay. I shall sip my wine again before we move on. Check my dog. Okay. All righty. Okay. So let's talk about deities. So far we covered themes, we covered some activities, we covered how do you want to feel when you're creating your actual celebration, because that's what's going to make it powerful. Now we're going to talk about deities. So I always suggest that you work with deities that you care about or that you worked with before. So many deities, it all depends on the deity. Many deities have different epithets, different facets, different ways that people used to honor them. So they might have an actual darker side. They might have a psychopomp side, which is like a god or goddess that can go from one plane to another, and that might like shuttle souls over to the underworld. A lot of deities have a darker side, or a side that connects with ancestors, or a side that connects with winter, or a side that connects with fall, or a side that connects with dark, like the upcoming darkness. So I always suggest that you work with deities that you care about or you've worked with before. Maybe deities that have to do with the underworld, harvest, ancestors, crossing of the veil, like I said. Now, I'm not going to give you a list of deities because you have the internet, and I do not believe that you should be like, Hades is a thing, right? Yeah, I guess I'll just like honor Hades, because gods are not the same as catalysts, right? You can like choose to have like obsidian or rose quartz or whatever. You can choose to have mugwort or yew or yucca or whatever in your rituals. You can choose what colors of candles you want to have, but the gods are different. They aren't spell catalysts. I mean, yeah, they're listed in your book, your correspondence book, right? But they are not correspondences. You can. There's nothing that's going to stop you from like picking a god or a goddess out. So like, I'm just going to honor Persephone because somebody once told me that that was cool. If you want to honor Persephone because somebody once told you that that was cool, that's awesome. However, please make sure that you do research on her, because like if somebody like just called me out of the blue and be like, hey, can you please help me? Hey, I want you to help me communicate with my ancestors. I'd be like, I don't fucking know you. Like, and that's what I would assume that God would do if I wouldn't do that. Like it's rude and you don't want to be rude. So if you do want to go ahead and honor a god or a goddess that you've never honored before, go for it. However, take the time to do your research. Take the time to read her stories, maybe do some devotionals, maybe create a shrine to her, maybe read some poetry out loud, cultivate the offerings that you might want to give to that deity. Don't just pick somebody out of a list. That is pretty disrespectful. I'm not going to say I didn't do it when I first started, because just like most people, like I probably got the same Wicca books that every girl in the 90s did. And it was just like, these are the harvest deities, and these are the deities for spring, and these are the that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to honor Flora and, Psyche. And I don't know who they are, but this book says I should. So, yeah, no. Do some research. I have a really, really good book. And I received it as a gift. And when I first got it, I thought it was going to be, I'm like, oh, great. This is one of those like 16,000 spell book things that are going to be pretty useless for me because I write my own stuff, right? But it's Judika Iles' Encyclopedia of Spirits. Now that sounds pretty hokey, right? Like if you if you've been around for a while, you're like, Encyclopedia of Spirits, it sounds pretty hokey, but it's very, very good. It is an amazing jumping off point when you're researching deities. And that's because it gives you information. It gives you like the name of the deity, pantheon, some offerings, a little bit of lore, just a little bit. And it's a great place if you want to do some deep research, especially on the internet. You're not just Googling like Aphrodite and see all of what comes up, because anybody can make a website, right? So like not everything is going to be pretty legit. A lot of things are UPG. If you don't know what UPG is, I have a video about it. So let me know, comment, and I will comment with a video that explains UPG. So the cool thing is it gives you some actual awesome keywords that will allow you to research more deeply and get a better understanding of the god or the goddess or the spirit, because it does have like different nymphs. And I was floored by how good it was. And I even actually at the time I got another copy so I could keep one at work, because I had some time at work at the time. And, it's such a great book. I really highly recommend it because it gives you some good keywords and some really good information to start out. But I always want to do the research because there's power in that. And there's power in learning about the deities, and it helps you connect better. And if you're going to be asking like, hey, help me connect with my ancestors, or if you're doing a devotional, please come and allow me to honor you or worship you, or whatever your personal vernacular is. You're going to want to make sure A, you call the right deity, and B, you know what you're talking about, because I feel like the more energy you put into something, the more you're going to get out of it. So if you're picking a name on a list, that's not really going to get you very far. And that's something I go a lot into in my independent witch program. So I'm not going to go too far into it, but I'm going to get off my soapbox. But I really feel very strongly about that. Okay. I need that since I get a lot of people coming in, the followers are listening. Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really, really good book. It's by Judika Iles. I don't have a lot of books. I've been doing this for a really long time. I go through my books every year, and I get rid of books that I haven't read, books that I feel should go to somebody else, books that don't resonate with me anymore. But that book always stays. That book always stays. Okay. So again, the gods are not correspondences. You can take a look at a list and pick one, but it's bad manners. All right. So let's kind of finish up a little bit. Let's talk about colors. We've got black, we've got orange, we've got red, we've got a lot of fiery colors. Samhain is a fire festival. So we've got some fiery colors. I don't understand nowadays Halloween, purple and green are part of it. So if that's your jam, there you go. I'm like, I don't, that's so weird. It's like, I feel like in the past 10 years, purple and green has really like come into that Halloween decor. Crazy. But for the most part, you're going to find black, you're going to find orange, you're going to find red. If you find black candles, buy them because you will never find them again until next year. Maybe you'll be able to find them on clearance on November 1st, which would be awesome also. But black candles are notoriously difficult to find. This is just kind of like an aside, like in a pop-up video way. Black candles are kind of hard to find, so they're great for banishing or endings or that sort of thing. So now's the time to go buy them. Black, orange, red. Some traditions and some cultures, it isn't black that is associated with death. It is white that is associated with death. So again, you're going to want to like think about who you're honoring, why you're honoring them. And you might have some family traditions or some cultural traditions that are part of your culture that you want to integrate. And that might mean white instead of black. Nothing wrong with that. You know, you do what you feel is going to make you have a successful ritual. And it's going to allow you to connect and feel how you want to feel at the end of it. Okay. And then in defense of purple, it is a color associated with royalty. It does look smashing with red. Oh my gosh. My group, we have done a lot of, we tend to pick a color for every Samhain and we wear it. So sometimes we do like purple and red, especially if it's like a harvesty ritual, or if we're doing like if we honor Dionysus and Aphrodite, which we've done a few times, like they do look very well together. Also, purple is associated with like your crown chakra and your ability to kind of, you know, traverse the different worlds and all of that. So I get the purple, I do. But it's just funny because it's I'm not talking about like Samhain. I'm talking about like Target Halloween aisle. Like it's all purple and green and orange and black. So it makes me giggle a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about food. The traditional foods of Samhain are seasonal foods. If you are like a traditional Wiccan or a lot of traditional witchcraft, especially I think like Celtic traditions are, which is kind of where Wicca came from. Pork and apples are the main like seasonal foods, pork and apples. So, but really like if you are not vegetarian or pescatarian, definitely meat of some sort. If you are vegetarian or pescatarian, you probably want to do more seasonal vegetables. It's up to you. So it really is like, because it is the meat harvest. It is that bountiful, like this is the end of summer. We're celebrating the end of summer. We're eating some of this food because it won't all make it through the winter. We can't preserve everything. So let's have one last hurrah before winter really starts and like comes over to us. So those are the foods that I would choose to be part of my Samhain celebration. And I do say celebration because not everybody wants to do a big ritual. Not everybody is into that. You know, you can just do some activities. You can choose activities to do with your children. Or you could have a huge ritual. You could have a ritual with your coven or your family or your friends. Or you could just have a beautiful dinner. You could just have a dumb supper. You have so many different options. Like there's something you could totally do, whether you're your own self and you have half an hour, or you have a day to prep and do your actual celebration. So if that's something you want to do and you have not watched last week's live stream, last week's live stream on creating practical celebrations, you might want to go ahead and watch that because I talk a little bit about the practicality of creating your own celebration. And then you could take that and take this and this information and maybe create a really good Samhain celebration. It is like the main witches holiday. It is amazing shopping right now. So So that's basically about it. So I hope that this really helped you. I'm just going to check and see if there's any questions. Regarding black candles, I don't know how you feel about this, but I have an LED candle that I painted black and use in a French. Sure, if that works for you. It really is. It's all about what works for you. I'm never going to tell you that there's a right or a wrong way to do it, anything, because witchcraft is such a personal path. And yeah, heck yeah, if you paint an LED candle, I have red LED candles. I have a red LED candle that I burn during the summer on my Bridget shrine in the kitchen when it's too hot to light a candle because it's like 100 degrees. So I'm into LED candles when necessary. You know, I feel that they don't give as much like oomph because the fire energy is muted with LED candles, but I think that they definitely have their place. There's definitely a time to use them. But like, what are you doing? Sorry. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I hope that this helps you. Next week is the beginning of the Intuition Infusion Challenge. So I will not be doing a live stream next week. If you went out, you're SOL, buddy. So I will not be doing a Monday live stream next week because I will be posting a video. It's going to be a much shorter video. I'm posting a video every day for those 5 days next week about your intuition and accessing it and clearing blocks and all these awesome things. So I'm skipping next week, but the week after that, I believe we are going to talk about music and chanting and ritual and different ways to use it. If there's any questions, and I'm going to post this on the event too, if there are any questions that you want addressed, if you have any suggestions or anything you would like to be brought up in that live stream, you can go ahead and let me know. And then today I just posted another live stream. It's going to be in 3 or 4 weeks about shadow work, which is something that people tend to talk about a lot about, but there really isn't like a practical guide to shadow work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it and, talk about it so that we can talk about the practicality. I feel like that's my whole thing. Like, let's talk about what it actually is and how to actually do it. So I'm going to be talking about that in a couple weeks. So that is it. It looks like there are no questions. So I just wanted to thank you for being here and spending part of your Monday night with me. Again, if you watch the replay, please make sure you tap replay so I know that you watched it. It helps me figure out what is good, what is bad, what you like, what you don't like, and that's it. So I will see you later. As always, I'm available in the group by message, every place, because that's me. I also have an Instagram account. So anyway, I will talk to you soon. Bye.